Have you ever been alone in a quiet room and suddenly felt something brush past your leg? No sound, no shadow, but somehow you knew. Have you ever walked through the house and stopped because it felt like someone or something was watching you with love? No fear, just presence. Familiar, safe. Maybe it was the way your dog used to sit by the window, or the gentle pressure on your bed at night, where your cat always curled. They're gone, yes, but you still feel them, not as a memory, but as a presence. Maybe they're still with you, not in body, but in something deeper, something that moves through memory and silence and finds its way back when you need it most. Let me tell you a story. Rachel had a golden retriever named Max. He was with her through college, heartbreaks, and the loss of her mother. For 14 years, Max was not just a pet, he was her anchor. When Max passed, Rachel said she couldn't breathe for days. The silence in the house was unbearable. But on the 7th night after his death, something happened. She was half asleep when she felt the weight of paws jump on her bed. It was unmistakable, the same soft thud, the same warm pressure at her feet. She opened her eyes, no dog, no sound. But the bed sheets were warm, and her new puppy, adopted just days earlier, was staring at that exact spot, tail still, eyes wide. Rachel says she didn't cry that night. She just whispered, "Thank you for coming back." She believes it was Max. Just one last visit, just one last goodbye. And she's not the only one. An elderly man in Kyoto shared that every morning. His cat used to leap onto his lap during meditation. After the cat passed, he stopped the practice. But one morning, 3 weeks later, as he sat on the cushion out of habit, he felt a sudden warmth press against his thigh. He reached down, nothing there, but he wept not from grief, but peace. He said it was like she was saying, "You can keep going now." Different stories, different places, but the feeling is the same. A presence, a return, not imagined, remembered. And now I'll ask you, have you ever felt something like that? A brush of fur when no one's around? A dream too real to be random? A sound you swear you used to know? If so, share it in the comments below. Not just to be heard, but to let someone else believe that love like this doesn't end with goodbye. So if you've ever felt your pet return in some invisible way, you're not alone. In fact, over 100 years ago, someone tried to explain exactly that. And what he said changed the way many people view the souls of animals forever. His name was Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet. Cayce wasn't a writer or a philosopher in the traditional sense. He was a mystic, an intuitive healer, a man who, while in a trance-like state, delivered over 14,000 readings on health, reincarnation, spirituality, and the soul's journey. But perhaps one of his most beautiful and surprising beliefs was this: animals, too, have souls, not just instincts, not just biological programming. Souls with memory, connection, evolution, and even purpose. Cayce described animals as part of what he called a group soul consciousness. That means, unlike humans who each carry a distinct, individual soul, animals often share a collective spiritual essence. They operate from unity, not separation. They don't overthink, judge, or manipulate. They feel, they respond, they remember not through logic, but through energy. This group soul is like a vast field of love, and each animal is a thread in its pattern. That's why animals often mirror our energy. When you're anxious, your dog becomes restless. When you're peaceful, your cat melts into your lap. It's not random, it's resonance, But Cayce said something even more profound in rare cases, especially when an animal forms a deep, loving bond with a human. Something shifts. The group soul begins to individualize. A spark of personal soul starts to form. Through love, loyalty, shared life, and mutual care, the animal begins to awaken, not in a human way, but in a soul way. According to Cayce, this individualization means that an animal may carry the imprint of that bond across lifetimes. They don't just remember their bowl or the sound of your voice. They remember you, your pain, your essence, your soul. That's why, even in death, the connection remains. He shared stories in his readings of pets who reincarnated to find their humans again. A cat who returned to a young girl in 3 separate lifetimes. A dog who once served as a protector in ancient Egypt and later came back as a modern-day companion. In Cayce's worldview, this wasn't fantasy. It was divine design. Love, he believed, is never wasted. It carries forward. It connects souls across lifetimes, species, and time. So, if you've ever felt that your pet found you, or that they were meant to be with you, maybe they were. Maybe you weren't choosing them. Maybe your souls were reuniting, and perhaps Cayce wasn't the only one. Because long before he ever spoke of animal souls, ancient traditions across the world had already whispered the same truth in prayers, in myths, in silence. The belief that animals are more than flesh and bone is older than scripture, older than language. It is something humanity has always known, even when we forgot to say it out loud. In Buddhism, for example, there's the concept of sentient beings not limited to humans, but extending to every creature capable of feeling. The teachings speak of Buddha nature, the sacred seed of enlightenment that exists within all forms of life, even the tiniest insect. To harm an animal is to harm that awakening. To love one is to participate in the dance of compassion. And when you sit with your dog, heart open, breathing together in silence, that, too, is a form of meditation. In Hinduism, the soul or Atman travels through countless forms on its way to liberation. You might be a child in one life, a bird in another, a cat curled on someone's windowsill in the next. This cycle of samsara is not punishment, but evolution. Each form is a lesson, a step. And if you've ever felt your pet carried a wisdom far beyond its years, perhaps you weren't wrong. In temples across India, cows are honored, monkeys are revered, even snakes are seen as sacred. Because in the cosmic design of Hinduism, every life is a soul in motion. And in Christianity, though traditional doctrine once reserved heaven for humans, mystics and saints often saw differently. Saint Francis of Assisi called animals his brothers and sisters not metaphorically, but spiritually. He preached to birds, blessed wolves, and saw divinity in their eyes. Even Pope John Paul II once said that animals have the breath of God, a poetic way of saying they belong to paradise too. Because if heaven is the fulfillment of joy, and your joy was a dog, a horse, a purring cat, how could heaven possibly be complete without them? Among Native American traditions, animals are not just life forms, but spirit guides. Each animal carries a message. The owl brings wisdom. The bear offers strength. The deer reminds us of gentleness. To dream of an animal is not seen as fantasy, but as contact from the spirit world. When a fox crosses your path, or a bird lands on your windowsill after loss, it's not coincidence, it's conversation. A reminder you are not alone. These beliefs across cultures, continents, and centuries all point to one quiet truth. Animals are not just in the world. They walk with us through it, as companions, as mirrors, as soul echoes. So if your heart has ever told you, even for a moment, that your pet's love meant more than comfort, that it carried something sacred, something eternal, maybe it's because, across time and tradition, that belief has always lived inside us. Have you ever found comfort in your faith after losing a beloved animal? Have you ever felt like a dream, a sign, or a prayer brought you closer to them again? If so, I invite you share that moment in the comments, not for debate, but for healing. Because in a world divided by so many beliefs, sometimes it's the shared love of a silent creature that reminds us the soul needs no religion to be recognized. But even for those who don't follow Cayce or believe in karma, something strange is happening. Something science is starting to notice. Because across labs, journals, and case studies, a quiet realization is beginning to emerge. Animals don't just act. They feel, they remember, they even, perhaps, grieve and dream. For decades, mainstream science viewed animal behavior as little more than instinctual reaction, a survival mechanism. But new fields like cognitive ethology and comparative psychology have challenged that belief, showing us something far more complex and far more familiar. Researchers have documented elephants returning to the bones of their dead, gently touching them with their trunks, dogs who sleep beside the graves of their humans for days, even weeks, cats meowing into the silence of an empty room or pacing the hallway where someone used to sit. These aren't anecdotes, they are data points. And when the same story repeats across species, cultures, and continents, scientists start to listen. Studies show that animals form deep emotional attachments and respond to separation with behaviors eerily similar to human grief lethargy, loss of appetite, isolation, even signs of depression. Birds like parrots and crows have been seen holding silent vigils. Primates have been observed cradling the bodies of their dead, refusing to let go. And in controlled studies, dogs have exhibited measurable stress responses when their owners are in emotional distress, even from miles away. Then there are the dreams. Pet owners from around the world, different languages, different faiths have reported vivid dreams after the death of their pets. Not random images, not fragments of longing, but visits, moments of presence, a familiar look, a tail wag, a soft weight curling beside them in the night. These dreams often leave them waking in tears, not just of sorrow, but of peace. Some psychologists refer to this as emotional imprinting, the theory that deep emotional bonds leave a residue in the psyche, which can resurface in sleep. But others, especially in transpersonal psychology, suggest something more, that these dreams might be moments of contact, temporary crossings between planes. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a biologist known for his work on morphic resonance, has studied cases of dogs who seem to know when their humans are coming home even when the timing is irregular and no cues exist. He proposes that animals may be connected to us through fields of intention or subtle energy patterns we don't yet understand. His ideas are controversial, but the data is hard to ignore. Even more mysterious are the moments animals respond to unseen events, a dog suddenly sitting up minutes before a phone call about a death in the family, a cat staring intensely at an empty chair the day their person passed, a horse becoming restless in the hour a loved one transitions. Science calls them anomalies. We call them something else. Maybe science hasn't caught up yet. Or maybe it's just beginning to. Because when data starts to echo what the soul has always whispered, that animals love, that they grieve, that they stay with us in ways we can't always see, it's time to listen differently, not just with logic, but with reverence. Have you ever had a dream so vivid it felt like your pet had come back? A look, a touch, a goodbye? If so, I invite you to leave your story in the comments, not for explanation but for affirmation, because in a world that demands proof, sometimes what we feel is enough. And now, I want to ask you something more personal, not about beliefs or theories or even science, but about you. Because all of this, the stories, the traditions, the studies, they mean nothing if they don't awaken something already sleeping inside your memory. Have you ever been sitting alone, perhaps in the quiet of a long night, and felt a familiar presence you couldn't explain? A moment when your heart calmed for no reason and you thought of them, or a scent in the air, a sound in the hallway, a small shadow that made you turn your head, knowing no one was there, but still feeling known. Have you ever looked at an animal not your own? Maybe just one passing by and felt an ache so deep you couldn't name it, as if your soul recognized theirs, even if your mind didn't understand why. Maybe you've had a dream, soft and strange, where they came to you, looked into your eyes, and then left without speaking. Maybe you didn't tell anyone. Maybe you thought it wasn't real. But tell me this, did it feel true? Because the soul doesn't always speak in logic. Sometimes it whispers through emotion, through memory, through stillness. And if your soul has ever whispered, I remember them, that's all the proof you need. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to explain it. You only have to honor it. So pause for a moment, breathe. And if someone just came to mind, a name, a face, a paw, a presence, hold onto that. Or better yet, write it down in the comments. Because your memory might just be the bridge someone else needs to remember. They're not crazy. They're connected. Maybe this isn't really about whether animals have souls. Maybe it's about remembering that the soul, in all its mystery, doesn't belong to any single species. It doesn't ask for proof. It simply asks to be felt, to be honored, to be seen. And maybe that's what your pet did best. They saw you, in your joy, in your silence, in your brokenness. And they stayed anyway. They didn't need to speak your language to understand your pain. They didn't need to give advice. They just laid their head in your lap and told you, in the only way they knew, how you are not alone. And maybe that's the most divine thing any soul can offer. So if you've ever questioned whether your love was real, stop. It was. And maybe, just maybe, that love didn't end with goodbye. Maybe it changed form, became lighter, quieter, but stayed. You may not feel their paw in your hand anymore, or their weight against your feet, but you feel them in other ways, in the stillness, in the softness, in the sudden warmth that doesn't need a source. And now you have a choice. You can treat all this as coincidence, or you can let it shift something inside you. You can begin to see every animal not as property, but as presence, not as pet, but as soul. A soul that remembers, a soul that walks with you. So if someone has walked with you through storms, through years, through lifetimes, say their name again. Not out of sorrow, but gratitude. Leave their name in the comments below, like lighting a small candle in their honor, because love like that never dies. It just transforms. And if you know someone grieving someone who lost their furry, feathered, or four-legged companion, share this with them, not to prove anything, just to say I believe you. Because sometimes the most human thing we can do is love without needing to be above. And sometimes the most sacred thing we can feel is the soft reminder they never left you.